Okay, ready to dive into some seriously mind-bending stuff.
Always up for a challenge.
This time, we're tackling consciousness and experience,
Wow.
using Zoltan Torey's book, The Conscious Mind, as our guide.
Okay.
You gave me some fascinating excerpts, and let me tell you, this is going to be a wild ride.
Yeah, Tori doesn't shy away from the big questions. How does our brain create awareness?
Mhm.
What role did language play in our evolution?
And do we actually have free will?
You're about to unpack how your brain creates the
You
reality.
experience every day.
Yeah,
I'm hooked already.
good.
One of the things that jumped out at me right away was Torey's distinction between awareness and consciousness.
Yeah.
He argues that awareness is pretty basic.
Uh-huh.
Think of like a dog feeling the sun on its fur.
Okay.
Just sensory input, right?
Right. Awareness on that level is about reacting to the environment.
Okay.
But consciousness, as Tori defines it, is a whole different ballgame.
Okay.
He calls it this upgraded, self-reflective awareness
Okay.
that's unique to humans.
So it's not just about sensing the world,
It's not just sensing.
but about reflecting on it, analyzing it, creating meaning from it.
Exactly. Yeah.
So what sets humans apart? Was there some kind of evolutionary leap that took us from basic awareness
Yeah.
to this higher level of consciousness?
So Tori has this really interesting theory
Yeah.
about neoteny. It's basically the idea that humans retain childlike characteristics.
Even in adulthood?
Even in adulthood,
Yeah.
our brains take longer to fully mature. He argues that this slowed down development was crucial for the emergence of consciousness.
So a longer childhood equals a more complex brain.
That's the idea.
I can see how that might lead to greater intelligence, but how does it connect to consciousness specifically?
It's all about the wiring. Tori believes that this extended period of brain development gave us the flexibility to develop complex language skills. And language, he argues, is the key that unlocks consciousness.
Hold on, I'm trying to connect the dots here.
Okay.
So a longer childhood leads to language, which then leads to consciousness. How does that work?
Think about it this way. You can't really be conscious of something unless you have a word for it.
Right.
Language gives us the tools to label our experiences,
Okay.
to categorize them, to make sense of them. It's like building a mental framework for understanding the world.
So language isn't just about communication. It's actually shaping the way we experience reality.
Absolutely.
That's a pretty powerful concept.
Yeah. Tori talks about how the brain creates these word percepts,
Okay.
basically little nuggets of meaning that combine sensory experience with language.
So for example, when you see a tree,
Right.
you're not just processing visual information.
It's more than that.
Your brain is also activating all the associations, memories, and emotions you have tied to the word tree
Exactly. It's like language is weaving together all these different threads of experience.
into a coherent tapestry.
Exactly.
And this tapestry is what we experience as our conscious reality.
Tori argues that the evolution of language happened in two stages. First, we had simple naming, attaching words to objects and actions.
I see.
But then things got really interesting when we developed syntax, the ability to arrange words into sentences and express more nuanced ideas.
So going from tree to the tall tree sways in the wind
Yeah.
is what really kicked things into high gear.
That's a great way to put it.
Yeah.
That shift from simple naming to complex syntax was a game changer.
Okay.
It allowed our ancestors to not only describe the world around them, but to share stories, to reason, to create complex mental models of reality.
It sounds like language isn't just a tool for communication.
Right.
It's actually the foundation of our conscious experience.
Uh-huh.
But where does the mind fit into all of this?
Okay.
Is it the same as the brain, or is there distinction there?
Tori makes a very specific distinction between the two. He argues that the mind isn't the whole brain,
Okay.
but rather a specific module within the brain that's responsible for language and thought.
Okay.
He calls it the mind module.
The mind module.
And he describes it as a complex system with different components that work together to process information
Right.
and create our conscious experience.
So it's like the mind is a specialized department
It is.
within the brain, dedicated to language processing and higher level thinking.
That's a helpful analogy.
And remember, that mind module
Yeah.
is what allows us to have this constant internal dialogue,
Right.
this stream of thoughts that we experience as ourself.
Exactly.
It's a part of us that can reflect on our own experiences
Yeah.
and make sense of the world around us.
Yeah.
Okay, so we've got the brain,
Yep.
the mind module,
Uh-huh.
and this sense of self.
Yeah.
How exactly does Tori describe that feeling of being a conscious agent, of being the one who's experiencing all of this?
He uses the term cosalience
Causalis.
to describe that feeling of agency that
Yeah.
accompanies every thought or action.
Okay.
It's the awareness that I am the one having this thought,
Uh-huh.
that I am the one making this choice.
So it's not just I think,
It's more than that.
it's I know that I think. It's that extra layer of self-awareness that makes us human.
Exactly. And Torrey argues that this sense of self isn't some mystical phenomenon.
Okay.
He believes it has a neurological basis,
Right.
that it's constructed by the brain through this interplay of sensory input, language, and self-reflection.
This is all so fascinating, but I have to admit,
Yeah,
it's raising more questions than answers.
I bet.
For example, if this sense of self is constructed by the brain,
Mm-hmm.
does that mean it's an illusion?
It's a question worth exploring.
And if so, what does that mean for free will?
Exactly.
Do we actually have control over our choices?
Mm.
Or are we just along for the ride?
Those are some of the biggest questions
Yeah.
in philosophy and neuroscience.
Yeah.
And Torrey dives headfirst into that debate.
Well, let's dive in with him. I'm eager to hear what he has to say about this whole free will conundrum.
Me too. Torrey doesn't shy away from the implications of his theories. He suggests that while we have this strong sense of agency, the reality of how we make choices is a bit more complicated.
So even though it feels like we're making choices freely,
Yeah,
there's more going on beneath the surface.
exactly. He uses this term, functional autonomy,
Functional autonomy.
to describe how our brains have evolved to give us this powerful illusion of free will.
Okay, break that down for me. What does functional autonomy mean in this context?
Think of it this way. Our brains are constantly taking in information, processing it,
Right.
and making decisions based on a complex set of factors.
Okay,
Our genetics, our past experiences, our current environment.
I see.
But if we were consciously aware of all those calculations,
Yeah.
we'd be overwhelmed.
So it's like trying to drive a car
Yes.
while simultaneously thinking about every single mechanical process happening under the hood.
That's a great analogy. We'd be paralyzed by indecision.
Yeah, I can see that.
So instead, our brains have developed this streamlined system where our conscious minds feel like they're in control, making choices freely.
But if we're not really calling the shots, who is?
Torrey argues that the mind,
Yeah.
that language-driven module we talked about earlier,
Right.
generates options.
Okay.
It's like our internal brainstorming session.
Mm.
It weighs different choices and considers various possibilities.
So the mind is the creative department
Exactly.
coming up with all the potential plans.
But it's the brainstem,
Okay.
with its deep-seated biological drives and values,
Mm-hmm.
that ultimately makes the final decision. It acts as a filter, selecting the option that best aligns with our survival instincts and learned behaviors.
It sounds like a CEO and their team.
Okay,
The Dane presents different options,
right.
but the CEO has the final say.
Yeah,
But wouldn't that make us feel like passengers in our own lives?
that's the paradox of free will.
Yeah.
We experience this strong sense of agency, but the underlying mechanisms are largely hidden from our conscious view. Think about all the decisions you make every day, what to eat, what to wear, what to say. Do you consciously analyze every possible outcome before making those choices?
Definitely not.
Right,
Most of the time, I just go with my gut feeling.
exactly. And that gut feeling is the result of your brainstem evaluating all those options
Yeah.
based on your values, your instincts, your past experiences, all happening in a split second,
Wow.
below the level of conscious awareness.
So is Torrey saying that free will is just a complete illusion?
Well,
That we're basically robots?
he's not saying we have no agency,
Okay.
but he's definitely challenging the traditional view of free will as this purely conscious, deliberate act.
Okay.
He suggests that it's more of a collaboration between our conscious minds and our unconscious processes.
So we're not just puppets on a string,
Right.
but we're also not completely autonomous agents.
Yeah.
It's like we're co-piloting this ship called our lives
Okay.
with a very skilled autopilot system.
I like that analogy. It highlights the complexity of the system. And Torrey argues that this functional autonomy,
Right.
this illusion of free will,
Yeah.
is actually a brilliant evolutionary strategy.
Okay, now I'm really curious. How does a fake sense of control
Right.
help us survive?
Imagine if we had to consciously process every single input and consider every possible outcome for every decision.
I can't even imagine.
We'd be completely overwhelmed.
We'd never get anything done.
Exactly. So by giving us this feeling of agency,
Uh-huh.
this belief that we're in control,
Right.
evolution has freed up our conscious minds
Okay.
to focus on higher level tasks,
Like,
planning, problem solving, creativity,
right.
things that require a sense of self
Yeah.
and a belief in our ability to shape the future.
It's like having a super efficient operating system running in the background.
Yes,
So our conscious minds can focus on the big picture.
exactly.
Speaking of big pictures,
Yeah.
we've been talking a lot about language and the mind. But what about those subjective experiences, those feelings and sensations that make up our inner world?
Okay.
Qualia.
Right. Qualia. Yeah.
Does Tori address that at all?
He does. And it's one of the most intriguing parts of his book.
How cool.
Tori suggests that qualia, those subjective experiences of color, sound, taste, and so on,
Yeah.
aren't some mystical phenomenon.
Wait, really? So what are they then? If they're not mystical, how do they arise?
He argues that qualia are the brain's way of translating digital signals, those electrical impulses from our senses,
Right.
into an analog format that we can experience.
I see.
It's like converting computer code into a language our conscious minds can understand.
So it's like our brains are taking this raw data
Yes.
and turning it into the rich, vibrant tapestry of our perceptions.
Exactly. It's a way of making sense of the flood of sensory data we receive.
Okay.
And while we may never know for sure if your red looks the same as my red,
Right.
Tori's explanation grounds qualia in a biological process rather than some mysterious realm beyond scientific understanding.
That makes sense. But going back to language for a second,
Okay.
I'm still a little fuzzy on how we went from those simple word percepts
Right.
to the complex grammar and syntax we use today. It seems like a huge leap.
It is a huge lead. Tori explains it through a process he calls cognitive bootstrapping.
Cognitive bootstrapping.
Remember how we talked about those initial word percepts?
Yeah.
Those combinations of sensory experience and basic words like nouns and verbs?
Yes, like the tree example.
Right. Tori argues that by repeatedly using and re-exposing those word percepts to our brains,
Okay.
we started to break them down into their component parts.
It's like taking apart a Lego structure
Yes.
and then using those same bricks to build something totally new
Uh-huh.
and more complex.
That's a fantastic way to visualize it. So to stick with the tree example, we start with that basic word percept.
Okay.
But as we encounter more trees, different types of trees, we start to isolate specific features.
Whoa.
Fall, green, rough bark,
I see.
and boom, we have adjectives.
So we're essentially bootstrapping our way up
We are.
to more complex language
Exactly.
by analyzing and recombining the building blocks
Yep.
of those initial word percepts.
Precisely. And once we have those adjectives, adverbs, and eventually even those little function words like the, and, but, we can start creating sentences,
Wow.
telling stories, and expressing abstract thoughts.
It's incredible to think that our whole intricate language system, with all its nuance and complexity,
I know, right?
emerged from such humble beginnings.
It really highlights the remarkable plasticity and adaptability of the human brain.
It does.
But remember, these early proto-humans weren't crafting sonnets right out of the gate.
Of course not.
Tori speculates that for a long time, their thinking was still quite limited.
Okay.
They had the words, but not the syntax to express complex ideas.
So it would have been a world of concrete nouns and basic actions.
Yeah.
Kind of like those early cave paintings. Vivid imagery.
Yeah,
But lacking the narrative depth of later art forms.
exactly. But even with those limitations, the ability to name things was a game changer.
Oh, so.
It allowed our ancestors to share information,
Right.
to coordinate actions,
Right.
and to start building a shared understanding of the world.
It wasn't just about the words themselves.
It was bigger than that.
It was about the possibilities they unlocked for
Yeah.
collaboration,
Yeah.
problem solving, and ultimately shaping their environment.
And that's a key point that runs throughout Tori's book.
What is?
Language, consciousness,
Uh,
even this illusion of free will.
right.
They're all tools that have allowed us to not just survive,
Yeah.
but to thrive, to become the dominant species on this planet.
It's humbling.
It is.
And a bit daunting to think about how these seemingly simple processes
I know.
have led to such complex outcomes.
It's a reminder that we're still unraveling the mysteries of the human mind.
It's like we're piecing together this puzzle.
Yeah.
But each new piece we find reveals a whole new layer of complexity.
And that's the beauty of studying consciousness, you know?
Yeah.
It's a journey with no end point,
Right.
a constant exploration of what it means to be human.
Speaking of exploration, I remember one section in the excerpts where Tori touches on artificial intelligence.
Yes.
If our brains create consciousness through these complex neural networks,
Uh-huh.
Could we eventually replicate that in a machine? Could we build a truly conscious computer?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? And Tory acknowledges that it's a question that continues to spark debate
Right.
and push the boundaries of our understanding.
Yeah.
He delves into the idea of artificial consciousness
Okay.
and whether silicon can ever truly capture what it means to be alive.
So what's his take? Does he think we'll one day have conscious computers walking among us?
Tory is cautious about making any definitive predictions.
Okay.
He highlights the fundamental differences
Yeah. No.
between biological organisms and machines,
Uh-huh.
particularly when it comes to the way they process information and interact with the world.
So he's saying there's something special about the wetware of our brains,
There's something unique.
something that can't be easily replicated in silicon.
That seems to be his perspective. He points to the long evolutionary journey
Right.
that has led to the emergence of consciousness in living organisms.
Okay.
There's a depth and complexity to our biological systems, a connection to the world that's been honed over millions of years.
Wow.
It's not just about computational power.
It's more than that.
It's about the way we experience the world, the way we feel, the way we connect to our environment.
It's like comparing a handcrafted artisan loaf of bread to a mass-produced one.
Okay.
They might both technically be bread, but there's something about the artisan loaf
Right.
that just can't be replicated in a factory setting.
That's a great analogy. It speaks to the unique qualities of biological systems.
And Tory doesn't dismiss the possibility of artificial consciousness entirely,
He doesn't.
but he emphasizes the challenges inherent in trying to replicate something as complex and nuanced as human consciousness.
Exactly.
It raises all sorts of questions about what it truly means to be conscious, to be alive, to experience the world
Big questions.
in all its richness and complexity.
It does. And while Tory doesn't offer any easy answers,
Right.
he gives us a powerful framework for thinking about these issues.
I agree.
His insights into awareness, language, the mind, the self, even the nature of reality itself,
A lot to think about.
they all contribute to a deeper understanding of not just how our brains work,
Right.
but how we experience and interact with the world.
One of the things that really struck me in the excerpts
What's that?
was Tory's suggestion that life itself acts as a counterforce to entropy.
That's one of the most profound ideas in the book. Entropy, as you know, is the tendency for things to move toward disorder, to break down over time. But life, with its incredible capacity for organization, for complexity, for growth,
Yeah.
seems to resist that tendency.
So we're like little pockets of order
We are.
in an ever-expanding sea of chaos.
Exactly. And Tory argues that conscious minds, with their ability to understand and manipulate information, take this counterforce to a whole new level.
Wow.
We're not just passively observing the universe.
Right.
We're actively shaping it.
Right.
Our thoughts, our actions, our creations,
It's amazing.
they all contribute to the ongoing story of the cosmos.
It's almost like we're taking the raw materials of the universe
Yeah.
and crafting them into something new, something meaningful.
That's a beautiful way to put it. And it makes you wonder about the potential of consciousness.
What do you mean?
If we can better understand how our minds work, how they shape reality, could we unlock even greater possibilities for human creativity, for innovation, for
Massive.
solving the challenges facing our world?
It's an exciting and a bit daunting prospect. It feels like we're standing on the edge of a vast, uncharted territory.
We are, and Tory's work provides a valuable map for navigating that territory.
Okay.
He doesn't give us all the answers, but he equips us with the knowledge and the inspiration to ask the right questions, to keep exploring,
Yeah?
to keep pushing the boundaries of what we think is possible.
It's a reminder that the journey of understanding consciousness is a journey of self-discovery.
It is.
The more we learn about how our minds work, the more we learn about ourselves, about our place in the universe, about the incredible potential that lies within each of us.
So as you go forward, consider how Tory's insights might apply to your own life.
Okay.
How does language shape your reality? How do your choices reflect this interplay of conscious and unconscious processes?
It's food for thought.
What role do you play in this grand dance of order and chaos?
These are questions worth pondering,
They are.
and I have a feeling this conversation is just the beginning of a much deeper exploration for our listeners.
I hope so.
Tory's work is a powerful reminder that the world is full of mystery and wonder,
It is.
and that the greatest adventure of all might be the journey into our own minds.